how to capture and hold the viewer's attention while watching a film. The fact is that the viewer always has two planes of perception, objective and subjective. The objective is all that he initially sees and how he perceives the world around him, or the film that is shown to him. This is what is offered to him from outside, primary information. Subjective is his own internal plan, which is formed as a result of the fact that information from the objective plan gets inside the brain and becomes already information of subjective. The task of the scriptwriter is to ensure that the objective plan of the viewer coincides with his subjective plan. That is, there has come a resonance between what he sees and what he already knows. And when this happens, notional resonance occurs. What does this mean for us in the process of filmmaking? All the information that a person receives from the surrounding world comes to consciousness in the form of images. In the case with the film, we are primarily interested in visual images. This is a stream of information which arrives to the brain of the viewer with a frequency of 24 frames per second. That is, he is given a certain set of visual images that his eyes supply to the brain. And in the brain, this information is processed in such a way that words, notions, all appear on the output in the person's consciousness. That is, images saturate notions. Images are basic informative units. That is, we see them with our own eyes. But we can say that images are a visual lie. Visible, as a rule, this is not what really is. This is not reality. And the notions that come into play. These are powerful informative units that cannot deceive a person. Were created in the minds of millions of years of evolution. There's a saying, first you judge how nice, then you judge how wise. This is an illustrative example. Clothes are images, the mind is notions. Accordingly, there is such a difference between them. As already mentioned, the human consciousness works exclusively at the conceptual level. Images as such do not interest him. Images are simply providers of information from the outside world. Then in consciousness, they are proceeded according to special algorithms. And these algorithms were carefully studied by our team of psychologists. And as a result, it was established that any information model of the object, including the main character, consists of 48 notions. What is a notion? These words, but more voluminous, more informative than images. They are words that can include thousands of images. For example, there are notions as anatomy, childhood, care, law, idea, model, heredity, freedom, stimulus, stress, technology. You saw on the screen how these images, these visual images, show us the basis of this notion. Thus, the notions decode in the form of visual images. For example, the notion called technology can consist of thousands of different images, united by one sense. In my videos, I refer to such a phase as notional resonance. Notional resonance is the basis of the content visualization technology. This is what this technology is built on and what it is aimed at. Physics is already connected here. I want to stop on this phenomenon in more detail, especially for those who do not know this. Resonance is one of the basic phenomena in the universe. Resonance is a sharp increase in the amplitude of a system of oscillations when her two components coincide in a phase. Love is a resonance when two people, two hearts coincide. They have a powerful emotional splash, deep feeling arises. In the physical world, an example of resonance is a swing. If you've ever ridden on a swing, you should have noticed that when the amplitude of the swing comes, you add to it with the movement of your body. As a result, when these two movements coincide in time and in phase, then the swing starts to swing much faster, to move with wider amplitude. That is, the two phases summarized, and the result, almost out of nowhere, we get a large amplitude. Why is that important for us? Because from the movie's point of view, the resonance is the emotional response that called in the viewer's mind your video on the screen. Find a response in the heart of the viewer, in the soul of the viewer, in his consciousness. In general, why do we also start talking about time? Why do we, psychologists, suddenly become engaged in such a phenomenon as time? Because we are obliged to do this and consider it in detail. Physiologically, the person has two hemispheres in the brain, left and right, and it has been established that the right one is constantly working in the mode of the present time. That's the line here. It is responsible for chronology. The left hemisphere works simultaneously in two modes, past and future. And because the hemispheres are interconnected in the process of information exchange, it turns out that we need to take them into account, the temporal processes. And so I would like to tell a little more about the unique phenomenon called time. By the way, I can talk about this for a very long time. I'm very interested in this. But now I will concisely tell you why we need to take account temporal processes when we speak about the viewer's consciousness and his interest in our film. As already mentioned, time is not a linear structure. What traditional scriptwriters do not understand, they take the duration of the film, 1 hour and 50 minutes, and divide it clearly into 3 acts, or the third act into 2 more sub-acts. And within the framework of this itinerary, they try to build interaction with the viewer. But they just saturate this chronology with some events, twists and turns, and basically do it right. Yes, it works, so classical cinema has existed for a long time, but we promote to seize this phase of time in order to create a notional resonance. In order to create the interest, roughly speaking, if in the first case the viewer's interest goes smoothly throughout the film, then in the second case we will add a coincidence in the phase. That is, here is the first notion, the film begins, the viewer will keep it in his head, and if we add here our first notion, which coincides with the phase, that is, this one scene, the viewer perceives in this way, and we will add to the resonance the screen that coincides with his unconscious images, and notional resonance appeared. And when they clearly coincide in phase, each scene is one notion, and we will not have such a wave of spectator interest, but an increasing one. That is, we will go beyond the borders of traditional interests, and when the subjective and objective plans about what I have told coincide, then the interest increases. It turns out that the wave of audience interest first is cyclical. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that time is cyclical. This figure will endlessly repeat in this way. The cyclicality of this time is the same day or the seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. We must, in addition to the chronology, when the year passes and the next year follows, take into account the cyclical nature of the seasons. But still there is a third parameter, which characterizes time. This is the position of this crest of the wave. This is the so-called phase. Time has 3 characteristics: chronological, cyclical, and phase. We propose to use this to form a spectator interest. There is a wave of spectator interests. Here it is over, through the line of the present, it will switch to another object now. Here is an antagonistic scene. Here again, the scene ends, the second wave of spectator interest, the second notion of the model. The viewer's consciousness pulls out from the model and compares with the screen. And we already hear this notion in the form of visual images, resonance again. And if, in the same scene of spectator interests, we will also know his model, we will also prescribe his notion, respectively, and the spectator's interest will be formed to the antagonist too. We will also catch the resonance. Thus, if we offer our notions at each point of the cyclicality and phase, then the wave of interest will always be not traditional, but will be stronger and higher. We propose to expand the borders of the viewer's consciousness, extend the frames of his interest. According to the film, 1 hour and 45 minutes, here it will be the 48th notion. That is some afterward. Here we introduce to the viewer from the screen the 48th notion on how to analyze it. Here it's called waves of interest, the final, the end of the analysis of this model. The spectator is satisfied because he was counting on this kind of interest, but he got this, and it will inspire him so much that he will certainly advise to see the film to all of his friends. The film shocked him emotionally. Therefore, we propose to use, in addition to the traditional chronology, which now is accepted in the scenario of art, but to use additionally phase and cyclicality. By the way, if we distract from cinema and use this three-dimensional time formula in the economy, then we can say that when the wave is at the bottom here, in a recession, a crisis, here you have to buy everything. And when the wave of interest has risen again, here to the top, you need to sell everything. This difference, you can grow rich. The formula is simple, but you just need to catch this wave, and if you sit on the wave, it will carry you. You need here, chronologically apply any effort, but you will still slowly move forward. Wait here until the end of the period. No, when the wave, you won't even notice how time flies. But here, of course, you need to clearly know how this notion is called and how to offer the right images. Then there will be an effect. Mathematically, we already know how it looks. But how does this happen? It's uninteresting films. Here the viewer expects such a notion from the protagonist model, and here the scene, firstly, does not coincide in phase, that is, with the viewer waits, and the notion is not shown, and he immediately loses interest. Or if the wave goes with some other frequency, that is, the events are not divided into scenes but chaotically mixed, and everything that does not coincide with the waves of his interest, all this is failure. The viewer will not be interested, he will yawn, he will go for popcorn, and if you coincide in phase, he will not be able to tear himself away from the screen for the very first to the last notice in the scene. So this is how it all works. If you write your script with regard to such a wave of spectator interests, and in addition, also with the help of notions that we have established in this information model, you will almost certainly be guaranteed of the interest from spectators. At least, if at the script level you are competent to prescribe all this, you will initially potentially guarantee the viewer's interest in your film. And here, already on the stage comes the questions of your personal talent, your creativity, your ability to translate these notions into images and scenes. The task of any writer is to develop his talent, choosing those images that are most significant for the viewer. If the images that are chosen are interesting and unique, then the script has been written by a talented person. And the question of disclosing talent is one of the cornerstones of the content visualization technology, and we will continue to talk about that in the next videos.